All right, I think we are live. Let me see. Is there anybody in
All
here
right.
yet?
Oh yeah, and there's a little icon of an eyeball with a line through it. There's not a line through it on mine, but I think I might have clicked on it. Does that affect anything?
Icon with an eye through it.
Yeah, like right next to your name, there's an eye and then a camera and then a microphone. And it says on the eye, visible on stream, but yours has a line through it. So I don't know if that's making yours not visible. Like I can see you, but
No, no, I'm visible on stream, I think, yeah.
okay, cool.
So, yeah. But thank you for pointing that out. Hello, everybody.
Yeah.
Um, are we live? For those of you who are in here, if there's anyone in here yet, can you hear both of us? Can you see both of us? Hello, doggo, doggo. both both visible on stream. Okay, great. VPN. You can hear both of us. Okay, awesome. Cool. All right, we'll just give it a
All right, cool.
few moments just to have some people come in. What's up, Pig's Dream? What's up, a friendo? Pig's Dream killing it with the activism repost, so I appreciate that. Thank you. Alawali Blue Vegan. He said, Carson is an ex-vegan. That's hilarious. Okay. What excuses will he make for killing sentient fish? Yeah, this should be a. I'm very excited to have this discussion. I'm sure Carson is as well. but but yeah, Carson, you want to just so this is Carson. He runs the channel
Hello.
Reasonable Vegan. Do you have do you want to start with an introduction or an opening statement or
No,
something?
no.
No,
I'll just
okay,
I'll just go with the flow. Yeah.
okay. So yeah, I guess what do we got? 7 people in here. Yeah, I guess we could start. So okay, so the first thing I know you had a question for me, which but I just want to establish just a, kind of what your position is, right? Because I did watch your stream where you talked about your new dietary changes and your kind of views on things, but essentially what it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what it sounds like your position is that exploitation, like exploitation, is justified in the case of like dietary need or some kind of like personal benefit. Is that more or less your position?
Um. Yes. Sorry, I was distracted pondering a thing, and yeah, I would say for optimal health. Yeah. Well, here I'll go ahead and just state it outright. I'll try to shorten this as much as possible because there's so many routes you can take things. It's complicated. Just positions on like human versus human actions because we have to figure out how to cooperate in a society to as an opposite of just living out wild in nature. Um, but as far as how I view morals and actions humans should take when it comes to sentient beings, I don't care about the word animal. I don't care like if bivalves have not been found out to be sentient. I don't care about them. And so I don't care what something is labeled. It's just the idea that if we can scientifically have a pretty good idea that something can suffer or feel pleasure, then I personally think it's immoral to make something suffer when you don't need to. And so there's we have reasons for different actions we do. If somebody that has some mental challenges tries to attack and kill somebody, but they're not even, there's nothing about them doing it that makes it their fault. Like that's just the action that's going to play out. Or maybe let's say they're doing it in their sleep, they're sleepwalking, they're going to kill somebody. I think it's perfectly fine to kill them and stop them from doing it, even though I feel really bad for that person because they're not intentionally doing something bad. But we have different reasons that we say we can do these actions. And so for me, the examples when it comes to um, any harm of animals would be if I can view it as reasonable for being needed for optimal health and optimal safety of humans, because I value humans a bit higher than animals. And a quick example I could give would be, I don't think humans should own or ride horses or anything like that. But back before cars were invented, if somebody created like a hospital of sorts and like had ways of helping people with like unique cases of needing a doctor for certain surgeries or whatever, and then this is discovered that this person like can do this thing and help these people, and somebody lives somewhere really far away and they have a situation where they need to get their kid to this doctor, otherwise their kid's going to die, I would justify riding a horse to throw your kid on the horse to get there. And everybody's going to have their different levels of what their reasonings are. But I would say pretty much when it comes down to optimal health of some varying degree, and I don't even know 100% where that cutoff is. Conversations like this will help lead me to refine my cutoffs. I don't know if in that ramblings I got all of it out, but that's about where I'm at.
Okay, perfect. And Doggo just subscribed. Thank you. I appreciate that for sure. And Carson, I appreciate you going through that. Before we start, I do have a lot. I'm gonna let you ask your question, but then I have a lot for you. Guys, if you are enjoying the stream, feel free. No pressure. This is the only time I'm gonna say it. Feel free to give a super chat, donate, whatever. It helps support the channel. But otherwise, feel free to enjoy watching for free. And again, Doggo, thank you for the subscriber. That's awesome. Or for the subscription. Okay. Give me one second. I'm just going to make a quick note here. Okay. So I will let you ask your question since you asked me before. So yes, what is the question you had for me?
Okay, so I'm going to lay out a situation. I'll try to make it short, and then I just want you to answer it. I think I know your answer, but I want to make sure that I haven't misunderstood you in the past.
Sure.
Okay, so let's say we have this woman. She's 25 years old. Her name is Allison. Allison, let's say she's not a huge fan of cats. Maybe she's mildly allergic. Allison cares about animals. Allison does not want to harm animals or exploit them in any way possible.
Okay.
She does not consume any animal products, and including bivalves, anything that's even possibly questionable that it's sentient. She doesn't consume any. She doesn't buy any products that are made from animals or tested on animals.
Okay.
No clothes, no
So,
makeup.
so she's
nothing.
vegan for the most part. Okay.
Okay, yep. So we got all that. No eating, no buying, no to an extreme. She'll learn all the different things about if currently all the palm oil is coming from places where orangutans are getting displaced. She won't do that. She'll eat all the plant-based milks, but not almonds if currently almond production is harming bees. She very extreme. She goes to all the protests. She holds up signs. She's very is spending her whole life just trying to support animals. She finds this cat that got hit by a car, and she doesn't like cats, but she wants to take this cat and help it out. The cat ends up being fine. She nurses it back to health. She takes it to a humane society and says like, "Oh, I hope you guys can find this thing at home." And for whatever case, the humane society in this situation says, "Oh no, we're gonna have to put it down if you leave it here." And then she decides to take it home, and she gets it cat food. She's getting it non-vegan cat food. Somebody tells her, "Oh, you should get vegan cat food." She looks into the science of it. She's not fully convinced, so she goes like, "No, if I'm convinced in the future with more information, I will get it vegan cat food." But
So
I'm fine with getting it regular.
Yeah, is this just
Yeah.
a cat food question?
It is, but I wanted to lay all that information out of everything she's doing with every element of everything.
Yeah.
Would you personally say that it's ridiculous for her to call herself a vegan?
Yes. Yeah, I would.
Okay, cool.
So when you say ridiculous, I don't know about ridiculous, but I would say that so if you're framing a person who is so committed to animal rights and so committed to being against the exploitation of animals, being against, discriminating based on species. And yet they are happy, or they are still doing that. They are still going against their own values just to feed another animal. That doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah, that I would say that they either are very confused. Like I would say that they either have like some kind of emotional bias going on, maybe with that specific animal, or they just aren't, like, even if there was no science supporting vegan cat food or vegan dog food, it still wouldn't make any sense to adopt animals just to feed them the body parts of dead animals. But especially when we have science, when we have the modern technology to formulate vegan pet food, then I would say that they're not vegan. Yeah.
Okay. And just one quick follow-up question. Like, let's
Mm-hmm.
say we found out that 20% of the population
Mm-hmm.
um, was vegan, but that included those types. And then let's say that 19% of the population were that type.
Mm-hmm.
They were as vegan as you can be. Plus, they think it's okay to give pets non-vegan pet food. And then only 1% of the population was where you stand. And
Sure.
I somewhat stand where you stand. If somebody said there was 20% of the population was vegan, would you say no? 1% of the population is vegan.
Well, I would say that they would be. Yeah, I would say that 1% of the population actually aligns like all of their actions with their values. I would say that I wouldn't discredit, like I wouldn't say I would rather only 1% of the population be like me and 19 versus having 20% of the population be people like me plus the animal pet food people, right? Like I would still prefer to have more people extending moral consideration in as many ways as possible, regardless of if they're fully vegan or not. Like I would still prefer that, because those people are still going to help with legislation for legal protections for animals in a lot of different areas. They're still going to help raise demand for plant-based products and decrease demand for animal products in their own life. So yeah, I mean, I'm not. Definitely that would be still a great thing, like just for in practice and for the progress of animal rights. But
Mhm.
I that's not the goal. That's not where we want to
Okay.
be. Yeah, I would
And
I would
one
still.
last
Yeah, go ahead.
follow up, and then I'll put it completely all over to you. So if the vegan society, I don't know if you care about them at all in their definition, but a lot of people do. It's where the practical and or practicable and possible comes from.
Hmm.
Um, if they announced like, whoa, 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 leave these vegans alone. These people are vegan. They should call themselves vegan. And then if the 19% say we're the majority, vegans can feed cats animal-based food, and they say to you that they think you should change whatever you're calling yourself to a name that is vegan plus doesn't feed animal their pets animal-based products, would you have a reason to want to hold on to the title, or would you just look at it like, oh, these are just labels, they don't matter, and the vegan society, which is the biggest vegan thing or whatever that people follow, and n- um 19 out of 20, 90, what, 95% of whatever, a large majority of all the people that are using the label vegan are saying like, oh no, you're the one to change your title. Us 19% of the population aren't going to change ours. What would you think of that, the label in that case, and you using it?
Yeah, I mean, I could care less about the label, to be honest. Like, I use vegan because that's the most accurate term for what I advocate for and what we do. But if there was some kind of alternate universe where vegan meant something else, right? Vegan meant only you as a human don't exploit animals, but you can pay for the exploitation and abuse and murder of animals for another animal. If that's what vegan meant, then yeah, I would use another term, or I would hope there would be another term for people who don't do that. So, yeah,
Oh,
I could
okay.
care less about the label.
Okay, cool. Okay.
All right, cool. So, On to the juicy part. This is what I'm excited for, Carson.
Okay,
So,
cool.
I have some notes. Now, I want to ask you a couple questions. Do you mind if I ask you a couple questions, a little bit of backstory for you? Is that all
You
right?
can ask me anything possible.
Okay, cool. So, just out of curiosity, how long? So, there was a period of time where you were like vegan. I'm assuming like vegan, maybe not, but it sounds like it based on your title. So, how long would you say you were actually vegan for, or you at least ate fully plant based or didn't buy leather or whatever?
Yeah, yeah. So I let's see. Okay, so I'm 39. When I was 21, I went vegan for the first time. I was vegan for like a year and a half,
Okay.
100% vegan. And then since then, I went on and off vegan. But this most recent time, I watched Earthlings in 2016, September 2016, and or maybe it was 2015. I think 2016. And at that point, I had been off and on because of people I was living with, dairy and eggs and some stuff. But that movie kind of pushed me even further to going, no, I know my stances, and I need to stick with them because like cementing it further into my brain. But yeah, so anyways, September 2016, and then it wasn't until around the time of starting the Reasonable Vegan channel that I started eating bivalves. If you consider bivalves making somebody not vegan,
Okay. And
I
so
can't remember your stance on bivalves. So yeah.
I what's it called? I do the precautionary principle. So
Gotcha.
I haven't dug deep into the research, and to be honest, it's just of bivalves. I had no interest in eating before. I have no interest in eating now. It's just like a palate preference thing,
Yeah.
more than anything probably. But yeah, I just haven't looked into the research. So for me, I mean that's we could debate about that at a different time. But
Yeah.
so
What is that? So 8 years then.
okay, so if we're including the bivalve consumption, let's just say, for example, in this case, so from 2016 to very recently this year, you have been exclusively plant-based diet, not buying leather, not exploiting animals for other means. Would that be accurate?
Correct. Yep.
Okay, so 8 years. All right, so that's a long time. That's a long time. All right.
Hmm.
So let me also ask you this: do you have a partner? Are you married or
Yes.
have a? Okay.
Hmm.
Are they vegan?
Yes. Hmm.
Okay.
Same time. Watched Earthlings together actually. So yeah.
Okay, okay. Now, are they doing what you're doing now, or are they still vegan? Or
No, she does not eat bivalves and no fish. I don't think she's ever been too worried about honey, but doesn't actively eat honey.
okay,
But if it's in something that somebody like purchases and gives, then
sure,
it's
sure.
like okay, like it's just not caring too much about it. And then at the same time as me, dabbled in the pasture raised eggs, but uh, yeah, a little bit. So
Okay,
eggs, yes. Mhm.
okay, okay. So, and I just want to get a little backstory to understand kind of your position and maybe the psychology of everything here. But separate from that, I want to understand your actual like I want to ask you some questions and kind of get to your actual reasoning, right?
Okay,
So you
yeah.
essentially release a live stream where you discussed that you are now eating eggs and fish
Hmm.
because you have a vegan, I'm assuming vegan, but we could call it all junk food, quote unquote, addiction, right? Is that accurate?
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't call it a vegan, but yeah, like a sugar, mostly sugar, but like sugar, oil, processed garbage addiction. Yeah, yeah.
Sure, sure. Okay.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to think if I should. I think I want to go over the nutrition claims, some of the nutrition stuff you're concerned about at the end. I think it makes sense to start with like the moral conversation.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, one thing you mentioned, so you kind of mentioned in your stream that the only good argument you've ever really heard against veganism would be if it were unhealthy to eat plant based, right? I was,
Mhm.
oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. The only good argument for eating would be health related ones for I would say for someone or their dependents.
Okay. So my question is, like, because again, we're not just talking about eating, products at the grocery store. We're talking about like what this means for like our morals on a bigger scale, right? So we're talking about
Yep.
exploitation, right? We're talking about
Mhm.
treating individuals as products, enslaving them, abusing them, killing them, using their body parts, etc. Right? Um,
Yeah.
so I just want to understand what you mean because that's a very arbitrary, that seems or a very vague position, right?
Hmm.
If I think this is justified if it comes to my health, right? But how unhealthy, right? And when you say
Hmm.
unhealthy, do you mean unhealthy to eat plant based, or do you mean that we get extra benefit from eating animal flesh or secretions? Because there's a difference. If you and
Yeah,
I
yeah,
could
yeah.
clarify if you need.
Yeah, no, I accept the difference in a hypothetical vacuum, but I don't accept the difference in the real world. So I would say that a species is a species, and a species could either be good at being that species or bad at being that species. If somebody took a lion and fed it grass, it would probably be way less strong, and it would be having some issues, and it would be being bad at being that species. So when I talk about optimal health, I guess I mean being good at being the species I am, the a species of human eating a certain way or uh, abstaining from certain things. Not becoming obese and various different things, whatever like any individual human would be at like an optimal health, like strength, energy. um, if we could magically just press a button and know like this is the way your body and mind could be during your life that makes you the best at existing as you are,
Okay,
that
but
kind of thing.
sure, but don't you understand how how
It's
vague and how
vague.
complex? Yeah, so like
Yeah.
we're talking about like when it comes to forget about like when it comes to optimal, right, quote unquote health, right? So like no disease, clear minds, critical, good, yeah. Like there's so many factors that go into like optimal health, and I don't even know if that's
Mhm.
agreed upon amongst like health and nutrition experts. What is like optimal health, right?
Yeah.
So regardless of nutrition, there's so many factors that influence that, right? Genetics,
Right.
environmental factors, what you're exposed to, different things influence us all the time besides nutrition. So,
Mhm.
but again, you didn't really answer the question. So I just want to ask the question one more time.
Okay.
So like, how unhealthy? So like, for example, right? I'll clear this up a little bit. Let's say that by eating fully plant based, you can live a long life. You could live till you're 90 years old with very little to no chronic disease and get all the nutrients you need to function on a day-to-day basis, right? But
Mhm.
let's say by exploiting chickens and exploiting fish and exploiting cows, you can live an extra 5 years, right? So instead of dying at 90, you die at 95, right? Let's say it
Mhm.
gave you 5 extra years of your life. So you don't actually lose anything by eating plant based in terms of your day to day experience. You only gain something by exploiting animals. So
Mhm.
would that be justified to you?
To gain extra life. No, I don't think so. Maybe maybe I would view it as justified if I somehow viewed it as that was what I was designed for. To answer the question, I'll put it to like a further extreme. Alex O'Connor was talking to Ed Winters, and said if eating like a one fish a year or something made you like 2 feet taller or something like that, um, versus if you don't do it, you're gonna shrink like 3 feet shorter or something like that. Would you do it? And I don't think he answered the question, but it was a really cool conversation. And I've talked to some vegans about it, um, and some said yes, some said no. And so in that type of case, well, let's ignore the idea of something making you like worse or better or whatever. But if it was like some kind of a consuming animals to add some magical superpower that like isn't something that we're kind of like designed for, we just technically figured out a way to get some wild advancements. Um, no, I don't think I would view it like that. I'm just gonna. It's just really gonna come down to in the same sense that any of us can do what we can do on Earth. Um, if if you do actions and you go you notice like, oh, okay, not doing this action made me super like brain foggy and just like no energy and I can't do anything, and this gave me this energy. Or if I do this action, if I consume um zero protein and only fats and carbs or something, then I realize I can't like create this thing called muscle or whatever. Then you go like, oh, okay, I'm going to eat these things that bring us protein. So we find our lentils and our beans and our nuts. And so I don't know. It's really hard to answer the question because I don't know exactly where my limits are. And yeah.
Okay, so if I if just to put it in a more concise way, what you're essentially saying, assuming everything we know about human health and nutrition, right? If there was something through the exploitation of others that we can derive that would be beyond that, then you don't think it's justified. But
Yeah.
if
Well,
there's something preventing us from achieving a reasonable, like, human health standard, then it would be justified.
Um, y- yes, but it depends on what the action is. So even the thing that
Well,
I'm viewing as justified right now, I wouldn't find it justified to eat just traditional factory farmed eggs
okay.
in the same way that I'm doing pasture raised right now. Yeah.
Okay, so let's get into that. So yeah, I just want to get an idea because yeah, there is a difference between like optimal health and also like getting extra benefit. But anyway, that's besides the point. So let's go into the actual reason why you're exploiting animals, because this is like my comment mentioned, this is a new one for me. I've never heard this before in my entire life. So I guess congrats on the creating a new non-vegan excuse or something. Yeah, that's crazy to me. But okay,
Mhm.
so essentially your thought process is okay, you are addicted to junk food, processed food, added sugar, whatever, right? Donuts, cookies, cakes, right?
Mhm.
And to try and combat that addiction or try and get over that addiction, you are now consuming eggs and fish. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it sounds a little silly wording it like that, but yeah, yeah,
Okay.
something like that. But yes, to while in the process of treating processed sugar, processed oils, and processed grains for the most part, about 99 point something percent of those three things I just mentioned, while trying to get those completely out of my system, not out of my system, out of my mind,
Mm-hmm.
and viewing those the same way I view alcohol and meth and cigarettes and all the things, where I don't want to consume those, especially for me myself. Then yes, I'm consuming some other things on top of my fruits, veggies, nuts, seeds, whole food, vegan stuff. I'm consuming those in the process of helping me feel satisfied while kicking the addiction. Correct.
Okay. So, and again, if any of these questions are too personal, feel free to say you don't want to answer them. But
I doubt that'll happen. You're fine.
okay. Would you say that this is well, your struggle is a legitimate addiction, right? So like there's a different obviously people use the term addiction all the time. So would you say that you have like you struggle with binge eating, you have a legitimate addiction to these processed foods, or would you say that you just really enjoy them and you're having trouble balancing your enjoyment of
Y-
these foods and your healthy lifestyle?
Yeah, for sure. So I wouldn't want to misuse a word. I don't know if I use the word addiction too lightly. But yes, for me and for
Mm-hmm.
most people, um, I'd say, yeah, most is a fair word. That we are addicted to these processed foods. In the U.S., it's over 70% of people are obese, not just overweight, obese. So meaning about probably 50-ish pounds or more overweight.
Sure.
Right now, I weigh 220, but I oftentimes will be around like 250, and I'm I'm 5'10", and so I should be somewhere around like 165.
Yeah, I was
And
gonna say
so
around like 170 or so. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so my whole adult life, aside from when I'm successful, which is maybe 5% of my adult life, um, I've I've ranged from like a bit over 200 all the way up to 250. And I think most humans, if you take the 70% of obese humans, more than 99% of those people, even though there is some like fat acceptance stuff and all that, most of those people would do almost anything to make themselves just magically be fit. Now, for some of them, it might just be for looks and they don't care about
Hmm.
health. A lot of people care about health. I would say most people would probably say um, it's awesome that those come hand in hand. They there's not many things they would want more in life at all than to magically be down to a certain health or to a certain weight. And everybody, almost, I would say almost everybody knows, even if they don't know all the nutrition details in the world, almost everybody knows that to get there, it's something like a calorie deficit or cutting out all the things that everybody agrees on are bad foods. Doesn't matter if you're carnivore, keto, whole foods. The interesting and cool thing about every possible diet out there is they all agree on what not to do. You don't eat the junk food, don't eat the deep fried stuff or whatever. So they know that the thing they want more than anything in life, including myself, is to be here. And to get there, the actions are somewhat simple, yet every time they attempt to do it, doesn't matter if you lose 30, 40 pounds or whatever, that after a certain amount of time, a couple months goes by, you drive down the street, you see fast food, you see all this stuff, and then if you will willingly grab this donut, doesn't matter if it's a vegan or non-vegan donut, and put that in your mouth because you want those dopamine hits so bad that you would
Hmm.
sacrifice the thing that you're claiming you want the most. Um, that I call that an addiction. It might not technically be the word addiction, but
Yeah.
I definitely fall into that category. And I think almost all of the 70, I think anybody obese, anybody listening to this right now that's obese falls in that category because that doesn't make any sense to want something and to do the action that counters it.
Yeah, and I understand that. I mean, I just a little background about me. I mean, I was a very overweight, probably obese child growing up. So, you know, and even to this day, I struggle with binge eating, with overeating. Now, I found a balance where I'm able to binge on occasion. When I say occasion, I would say still on like a weekly or monthly basis, and but still do enough activity and eat, you know, formulate my diet in a way to where I'm able to maintain a healthy weight and be, you know, still be healthy. But it is a struggle for sure, especially with how readily available these foods are, how cheap these foods are. So I agree with you on that. Mike, so I am going to get into the moral aspect. I am going to run NTT. I'm going to do all these things. So people watching, just stay tuned for that. But I just want to understand because I can empathize with somebody struggling with their weight, somebody struggling with addiction, right? Because also I would say there's a difference between an addiction and an eating disorder, although both
Mhm.
stem from a similar point, right? Um, right, both stem from some kind of coping mechanism, right? They're both coping mechanisms. An eating disorder is more so relationship to food and using food as a way of control. And then an addiction is more so using whatever it is, you know, like you said, you're getting you're getting satisfaction, you're getting your fix, right, through whatever you're using, whether it's a drug, a food, an activity, and you're abusing that, right? You're using that to cope with your emotions or whatever you're dealing with. So they both stem from similar places, but they are different slightly. So just to be clear, what you would say is your condition, I guess, or your situation is more so that of an addiction and not so much of an eating disorder, or do you not know?
I don't know. I would say that it's if these foods did not exist near me, I would more easily be healthy.
Well,
And
of course, yeah.
so with them being things I consume, whether it's just me doing it because of the dopamine hits, or if it's because something in my childhood and control and all this stuff, I highly accept any possible options of anything. I would say in a sense it doesn't matter if us outside of the idea of the detail of it making it more or less likely to come clean from.
Well, so here's my question, right? Because I don't know how much you've delved into addiction, right? But I'm pretty, I have a good knowledge about addiction, not just from college because I study psychology, but also just in general. It's a topic I'm very fascinated by. So if this has been such a struggle for you, you're 39, you said you're pretty much your whole adult life. Before changing anything, right? Before, trying to, because I don't know, again, when we look at drugs, right? I know you compare this to like drug addiction. When we look at drugs, the people that end up going into rehabs, right? Rehabs are great for detoxing, right? To help people safely like get the drug out of their system, but they're not great in helping people stay away from the drugs, right? Get off, actually deal with what's causing them to use these substances as a coping mechanism, right? Because that's psychological, right? So like, yes, there is a physical dependence, right? So like you getting off these let's say we'll call it getting off, right? You getting off these junk foods or these whatever you're addicted to, that might help with your physical dependence if there is some, right? From the dopamine release, from the sugar, from the sugar addiction, whatever. But it's not actually going to help. Oh, hold on. Recommended dose donated $5. Thank you for the donation. I will read that in a second. But it's not actually going to help with why you use these junk foods or use these drugs or use these whatever in the first place, right? Why you became...
If there is a reason, yeah.
If there is, but there almost certainly is, right? There almost certainly is some kind of psychological reason or coping mechanism attached to these things, right?
Interesting.
So again, the question here is, before changing anything, have you ever thought of, or maybe if you did, but have you ever thought about seeing like an eating disorder therapist or going to like an addiction recovery, like an AA, an NA, something like that? You could even go to those. Those meetings are actually great, even if you have a food addiction, not even drugs. But have you ever thought about doing something like that to help you overcome your issues with food?
I've pondered it. I've talked to people that have talked to therapists about food related stuff and how like their childhood and different things can have an effect on it. I've pondered that. As far as going to like a rehab of sorts, I wish I could afford it.
No, not a rehab. Yeah, not a rehab.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I don't know if you're familiar, but Dr. Michael Greger, nutritionfacts.org, he has a buddy that runs something in California where they basically people go and they'll do like prolonged fasting, and then the only food available in the building is whole food, plant-based, and they'll do all these different things, getting people off addictions of food and stuff. And I think that's very fascinating and such a cool way to set up studies as well. But I dream of that kind of thing. But yeah, I'm not against it. I would say that I feel pretty set right now. I feel really good I'm like right now a month and a half, which isn't that long, into fully not touching processed of those three things I had mentioned. And if this isn't the one, I'll make you a promise that not only would, as if I fell off the wagon, if I went and ate an Impossible Burger right now, I would instantly not eat fish or eggs. Because if I wasn't doing what I'm trying to do to kick an addiction and to have foods that I treat the same way as meth, then I wouldn't harm a fly. So,
right. Yeah. Well, so the problem here is, right, because you said you're doing great a month and a half, but you're exploiting individuals, right? So
it's slightly, yeah.
Well, I mean, okay, I slightly exploit.
We'll get into that. Too,
yeah, we'll get into. But again, like the fact is, so you are paying for the exploitation of individuals. So yeah, I mean, essentially what I'm asking is like, wouldn't you agree, seeing as your name is Reasonable Vegan, that it is more reasonable to try and go through other means of dealing with this problem, and actually other means that have been like shown to like actually sustain long-term success when we consider addiction, when we consider eating disorders, like actual therapy, actual an actual actually attacking like the root of the issue. Wouldn't you say that that is more reasonable and a more moral position, or a better option, right? If you do care about animals, if you do care about being logically consistent, being moral, wouldn't you think that that would be better than just going straight to eating eggs and fish?
Yeah, if I was convinced it would be better, and if I had the means for it, which I don't necessarily not have the means for it. But yeah,
Well, most of they're
we could,
free. Most of these therapies
yeah.
and everything, there,
Oh,
a lot of
interesting.
them.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so
But
like
yeah,
support groups and stuff like that, all like AA, NA, all that's free. Eating disorder
yeah.
therapy isn't free, but a lot of times, depending, maybe insurance covers some of it, and then you can obviously you have your own budget, so you can figure that out. But yeah,
Well, yeah, I think it's good for groups of people that are like-minded to get together and talk and whatnot. Essentially, like what you're saying about yeah, I can't think of what you just said, but yeah, so that's good and all, and I think most people, I don't know, I do something kind of like that as far as like getting groups of people that like say on Facebook or something to constantly remind each other to eat healthy and support on like everybody needing kind of that reminder to eat well and whatnot. But as far as the psychological side of it, it's just not something I'm too familiar with. Like you can, when we're done talking, if you want to email me some studies on different things showing that the majority of people that are overweight that overcome it, there's a high success with psychiatry and blah blah blah. Then yeah, anything that like I've been, if I was convinced that sugar was like processed sugar was healthy, then once I was convinced of that, I'd consume it. So in the sense that I'm convinced that processed sugar, oils, and grains are not healthy, and I'm kicking those, if I was also equally convinced that the psychology side of it would be a pretty big impact, then I would factor that into my life. So yeah, send me some stuff, and if that happens to be helpful, then that's great.
yeah, and well, again, it's like right, these foods taste good, right? So yeah, they taste good, and we can acknowledge that, right? That I enjoy eating these foods because they taste good, and I want more of them, right? But
Hmm.
I would say that when it comes to like abusing something to the point where it's affecting your life in a negative way, to where it's disrupting your life,
Yeah.
that is almost certain that behavior has a lot to do with psychology, right? It has a lot to do with what's attracting you to that behavior, right? Now, yes, I agree that there is a physical dependence, right? So like
Hmm.
once you start doing heroin, right? If you just try and stop doing heroin, your body's going to say give me more heroin, right? There is
Yeah.
a like chemical or physical dependence to it at a certain point.
Hmm.
But the reason why you started doing those things in the first place, right, is almost always driven by some kind of coping mechanism, right?
I
Other
wouldn't
than
think so.
very few cases.
I wouldn't think so, but if that's the case, that's awesome. I mean, we just can't know what we don't know. So, and that's just something I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it seems like most animals evolved to not be around abundance of food, and so the food hits your dopamine levels, makes them do their thing, and it makes you remind you need to keep eating. And we just most animals have to, they go out, they get food, they come back. Some of them starve to death, and some don't.
Mm-hmm.
And now that we have this wild amount of abundance, and we figured out how to process things and make hyper palatable food. Um, and then a lot of people don't have time or don't care about health. So most obese people, when they were children, their parents just gave them whatever cereal that's full of sugar and all this stuff, and then they're becoming addicted to that food, and then we're just surrounded by it. So
Sure.
sure, an adult, if there was an adult that their entire childhood they had the parents gave them the healthiest foods possible, just whole food, plant based, just great healthy food. They were the fittest person ever, and then once they hit 18 and moved out on their own, they went and got addicted to a bunch of stuff. I would agree with you. There's probably and even then, I don't know if it's psychological. It's psychological in a sense, but I don't know if it would be the other details of doing it for any specific reason outside of that these hyper palatable foods are addictive. But right now, if I had to guess, it's a mixture of every person's um, makeup makes them more or less likely to be addicted to certain things, or more or less likely to have like stronger willpower or whatever. And then on top of that, these foods hit our brains in a certain way that makes us go, I hate that it's making me overweight, but it tastes so good, I'm going to do it.
Sure.
I have not been convinced that there's more of a psychology to it on average than that. But
Well,
I'll read anything you send me.
yeah, yeah. Well, and also I just realized there is a group specifically for overeating called Overeaters Anonymous. So there is that group, just like NA or AA. But separate from that, I agree with you. I mean, food addiction or the struggle with obesity is definitely more complicated. Like it obviously is more complicated than something like, or it's just different than something like drug addiction. I agree with you there. But it just seems like a shame, or it seems confusing for somebody who says they care about their morals, who cares about animals, or cares at least about having consistent logic when it comes to treating like sentient beings. It seems confusing to me that you wouldn't try therapy, or that wouldn't be something that you wouldn't go after
Well,
before exploiting
yeah.
individuals.
So we can only do things that we're convinced of. So like I'm not religious. I grew up religious, but I'm an atheist now. Um, I I don't know if you agree with this, but somebody can't just go like I don't believe in this thing, but I'm going to believe in it. I'm going to make myself believe in it. You'd have to be convinced that there's like a certain God to
No,
become
but
a part of a
therapy.
religion.
Would you say that
So
you're not convinced that like there when it comes to behaviors that we have very little control over, or have we have like behaviors that we struggle with understanding or controlling? Would you not agree that therapy is shown to be highly effective in helping with that?
I'm just not too familiar with therapy. I don't think there's anything that could happen in this conversation that could make
Okay.
me feel convinced that therapy necessarily would have a strong connection to this topic. But
Okay. Well,
if
I'll send you
there,
some stuff. Yeah, I'll
yeah,
show you some.
I'll read anything on it. Yeah,
But okay, separate from that, you're not convinced. You're not convinced. But yeah, I would look into therapy, genuinely, because
for
it
sure.
really
Yeah.
does help when it's one of the best tools somebody has when they do not understand what's going on. Right, when you
For
end
sure.
up in a similar pattern of behavior and you don't know how to control it, you don't know how to stop it. Therapy really helps guide you and get you to a point where you have more control over those behaviors. So that's the last thing
Okay.
I'll say about that. So yeah, I'll send you some
Okay.
stuff. Look into that. But anyway, now let's talk to probably what everyone's waiting for. Let's get into the topic. Let's talk about morals and consistency and all that jazz. So
Yeah.
I know you mentioned on the stream that you're eating pasture-raised eggs, and
Mhm.
are you eating farm fish or is it just wild caught fish?
No farm fish. Wild caught. Yeah. And
Okay, okay.
I kind of am making some adjustments to that currently within the past couple days.
What does that mean?
So in general, I was doing just any wild caught. But I've it took seconds to be reminded and feel I've kind of felt like unsure about fish. I mean, for various different reasons, health reasons as well.
Hmm.
But the moral side of things, because of the practices of how it's done. And so in some cases you could get fish that was wild caught, like just from small boats just doing their thing. But when you have like big nets that are destroying the ocean and getting like dolphins and all kinds of things caught in nets, I I'm pretty concerned about that. So I think when it comes to fish, which I don't consume much of anyways, I'm planning on switching over to, if I consume it, I have to catch it myself or something like that.
Okay, okay. And before we go on, I forgot to read the super chat. So thank you again,
Oh
recommended
yeah.
dose. It says, do what most people agree on. Lift. Hold on. Do what most people agree on. Lift, run, eat whole foods, calorie control, no junk, animal exploitation does. I think he meant to say animal exploitation does not have to be there. Great conversation so
Yeah.
far. Thank you, recommended dose. Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you
no,
for
and
the
I
super chat.
I agree it doesn't have to be there. In this case, it's the getting over the addiction part, but I agree with all that stuff. I at first when it just hearing lift, I thought it was gonna say like work out and ignore the diet. But yeah, no, I completely agree. I'm getting pretty into fitness right now. I did my first pull up about a week ago. I got two of them in there. Pull ups
Nice.
are hard. Do you do pull ups?
Oh yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean I don't do them anymore. I mainly skateboard for exercise now. I've been getting back into
Oh, cool.
skateboarding, but the first pull up is a big achievement. So yeah, it feels good.
Yeah,
So good for
yeah.
you,
But
man.
yeah,
But
and, but if that person's still listening, I completely agree. My intention for when I feel like I'm over the addiction would just be completely whole food, plant based, no animal products, unless I get convinced otherwise, over studies that happen over the years. As of right now, what I'm convinced of, I'd be eating just lentils, beans, and mostly fruit, nuts, lentils, beans, top notch for me. Veggies are great too. But yeah, and I agree with all the lifting. I am thoroughly convinced that we need to put on muscle to prevent harm in our old age and whatnot. So yeah. Anyways, go on.
no problem. And speaking of like psychology, also like the thing that you're attempting, right? This black and white thing of okay, once I get off and I get off the addiction, I'm never going to eat these foods ever again, even though they're readily available, even though they're in my face every day. And then what ends up happening, right? You're essentially like that's like the diet culture thing, right? Essentially happens if you do consume one of those foods again, right? You end up feeling immense failure, right? You end up feeling very disappointed and very frustrated in the fact that you made a commitment or you thought you could avoid these foods forever and you still gave in to the temptation, right? And I just
Mhm.
feel like just for long-term health, right? Long-term substance is the reason why my good friend Patrick from Foolproof Mastery, he says any food could be part of a healthy diet. The reason for saying that is because it is very difficult to have this black and white thinking, especially when we're talking about foods that, in moderation, really aren't as harmful as they are when consumed in caloric excess or when consumed, when taking up a majority of your calories. And we'll get into that. I'm going to address
Mhm.
nutrition, but
Well, really quick, I
mhm.
just want to really quick. I just want to respond to that. So I agree with you. Somebody could have the most perfect diet in the world and smoke 3 cigarettes a year and be perfectly fine. If they could get by with only smoking 3 cigarettes a year, or drinking 3 glasses of beer a year, or even using meth once a year, or something like that. Um, would be totally fine, and that's the problem when the addiction comes in. So the best example I like to use for this is alcohol, where some people drink one beer a week on the weekends, drink a glass of wine, and they're fine. Other people, as soon as they started drinking alcohol, they were addicted, and to
Mhm.
the point where they might become homeless because of it. They might have to go to rehab because of it.
Yeah.
And when they come clean from it, you have to be clean. And even then, I mean, I have close family members that would be alcoholics. They be clean for 15 years and then fall
And
off
the
or
relapse,
whatever.
yeah.
And so it's not as simple as just trying to figure out moderation and all this stuff. I think moderation might be one of the worst ideas for diet ever. And the other thing that sucks is the humans that can get by on the garbage. What I think everybody should collectively do is not touch any of it, go back to as if we never created the processed garbage, aside from what's necessary to feed. Like it's in some
Hmm.
cases you have to make garbage. Like I'm against pesticides being used for plants, but if pesticides are needed to feed all the humans on earth or whatever, I wish there's a way to make less humans be created. But if it's needed, it's needed. So if making endless amounts of like processed breads are needed to send quick food to starving people, that's fine. But in general, what has messed us up, the reason it seems to me that 70% of people are obese, is because these foods are here, and if they could do this moderation that people are talking about, they would do it. If they could buy a pill that would magically make them never overweight again, and that pill cost $50,000, do you know how many people would go and get the best jobs ever, save up the money, and buy that pill before they'd even buy a house? And
Sure, sure.
so the moderation thing will never work.
Well,
Except for the people it works for.
yeah,
It
yeah, of
works
course.
for you because you have the mindset that
Yeah.
you are able to do it. Just like a person drinking a beer a week,
Well,
most humans
mhm.
have the alcoholic mindset.
Yeah, no, and I agree with you, right? I agree that again, when we're talking about addiction, for some people they have to stay away from it completely, of course, right?
Mm.
But that's why the people who have to stay away from it completely, they go to things like NA to AA. Like they have these
Yeah.
groups. They actually have a plan. They have a 12-step program that helps them work through their emotions, helps them deal with the cravings, deal with the push to use these drugs or to eat these foods, and they
Mhm.
manage it in their life, right?
Yeah.
So that's why that exists, right? So again, back to the psychology thing, right?
Mhm.
If you are somebody who knows based on your experience and based on your relationship with these foods that you cannot eat a cookie because if you eat a cookie you'll eat 10 cookies, and if you eat 10
Mhm.
cookies you'll eat 20 cookies, right? I get that, right? Again, I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
That is why therapy and Overeaters Anonymous or
Mhm.
these groups exist, right? It's because there are people exactly like you who do struggle with that moderation, where moderation doesn't work for, and they actually have a clear program, an actual step-by-step thing that will help you deal with that, versus just
Gotcha.
kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
going it on your own. But anyway, let's go with NTT. Let's go to
Yeah. Yeah.
the moral
Yeah. Yeah.
stuff. So okay, so again, well, actually, hold on. There's just so many questions with this, but so just last thing,
Yeah.
before we
Yeah.
get into the actual NTT. Okay,
Yep.
I got to keep viewers on the edge of their seat so they stay longer. So, because again, your issue is processed foods, right? So, cookies, cakes,
Mhm.
candies, donuts, whatever, right?
Yep.
Refined grains, probably, or like potato chips, probably, whatever, right? Whatever
Yeah.
you want to call it.
Yep. Deep fried, the
Yeah,
burgers,
yeah.
pizza, all the things. Yeah.
So, my question is, like, how, like, when you were talking about eggs and fish, first of all, why wouldn't you just do a vegan alternative to those foods? So, like, if the sensation of eating an egg is satisfying you enough to where you can avoid these foods, why wouldn't you just buy just egg, which is a vegan egg alternative? You can make scrambled eggs for days. Why wouldn't you eat like a tofu scramble? Like you can
Mhm.
season and you can make these things exactly like scrambled eggs. Exactly like, have you
Yeah.
ever
Yeah.
had just egg?
I have. I like Just Egg all right. I liked it a lot, and then it seemed like they made a new recipe, and then I wasn't a huge fan of it. But even in the case that the recipe is fine, I'm gonna look up in the ingredients right now because so here's the thing. I'm trying to get off almost all processed food. And so part of it would be just finding foods that might be filling that I wouldn't view as processed.
Wait,
And
wait,
so
wait, well. So
if I ate
here,
whole foods and just egg, I would feel like just egg would be the main thing I'd be wanting. Let's see, canola oil. That would be a big one for me there, but I'll
well,
keep
hold on, time out. So now maybe
yeah.
we do have to go into nutrition a little bit. So
Yeah, let's do it.
because it's one thing, so like obviously something that's mostly empty calories and like added sugar, right? Obviously you can still eat some and make and have a healthy diet, right, in moderation, but let's say you don't want to do that or you can't do that, then there's no real nutritional value when it comes to a cookie, right? Very little.
Yeah.
But when it comes to just eggs, so like I just want to understand what you're basing your nutritional claims on, right? Because
Yeah, yeah.
canola oil, based on the research, actually has really good health outcomes when you replace things like butter or beef tallow or lard, right?
Yeah, so if people were to be able to stand strong on moderation and on calorie counting and that kind of thing, yeah, I feel pretty convinced that you could eat any of the oils. You could even eat certain amounts of sugar. You can eat all kinds of things if one can stick to that. The reason I think people can't stick to the calorie counting and the moderation and all that is the food addiction. So I think canola oil fits into that category.
Wait, but
Um,
just having
yeah.
canola oil in something triggers you to go eat donuts?
Well, so for me, not not being consistent is a big part of what triggers me. Like it'd be really hard to be kicking the processed foods, having like I like to like have a thing where it's just a firm stance. That's how I feel like my brain works. I know I don't use meth. I know I don't drink alcohol. These are firm stances. So if I tell myself like I'm not going to eat this food because it like these potato chips because they have the canola oil and potato, whatever it has, but then I'll eat this one that has the thing.
But don't
I
you
like
think sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but don't you think it makes more sense to base your nutritional decisions off of nutritional value and health outcomes versus just arbitrary lines on food? Because like
Um,
in the potato chips, right? I think it's reasonable to say, okay, I'm not going to eat potato chips because they're high in calories, they're low in nutritional value, and they're low in fiber, they're low in vitamins, right? They're low in
mhm.
everything that you would want, and high in the things that you have struggled with, right? High in fat, high in salt, high in calories. But in the case of Just Egg, it's high in protein, right?
Mhm.
It's relatively low. I don't know how much fiber. I don't know if there's fiber in Just Egg, but it's high in protein. It f- mimics the taste of an egg, which seems to fulfill that craving for you.
Mhm.
And health outcomes with canola oil is very good. It's actually really good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so
wouldn't
it's
that make
very
more sense?
possible. Yeah. So a friend introduced me to a food, making a homemade seitan, and it's like vital wheat gluten, which is just pure wheat protein, and then it's also I think like a chickpea flour and then nutritional yeast. So it's those three ingredients, and I made it. And it was incredible, and I couldn't stop eating it. I ate it like crazy, overate it. From my memory of Just Egg, at least aside from the last couple times I had it, I loved it. It was just like insanely good. And so I think one of the problems is something being hyper palatable. Now there's plenty of foods I eat that I love. Like I eat kiwi and banana quite a bit, and apples. I love them, but I don't overeat them. Like I might even eat like 5 bananas in a day. But I tend to feel pretty full on most whole food things I eat. But yeah, you're probably right that there probably could be something like Just Egg or some kind of processed food where like Just Egg has tapioca syrup solids, tetrasodium phosphate, trans gluten maize, um, gellan gum, all these different things, but then also the processed oils, which I'm trying to kick and stuff. So it's just I want to get my brain to a place where in the same way I don't use meth and cigarettes, at some point I'm only going to eat whole food plant-based. And so I don't want to put in the processed garbage that has all the things I can't pronounce and the preservatives and stuff. Like
Well,
when
but
I
again, you'd
yeah.
have to. This kind of seems like long word bad logic, right? You're kind of saying, well, I don't really understand what these mean or what they are, so therefore they must be bad,
Mm. I
right?
like
You
to
would
use the
have to.
I like to use the precautionary principle, like you might use with bivalves on long words. I don't mean that as a joke. Like seriously, I like to be cautious about something until I find out more about it. So
Okay,
before I knew
so
what
why don't you just eat tofu
citric acid,
scramble? Why don't you just eat
well,
tofu
hold on.
scramble?
Before I knew what citric acid was, it was something I would stay away from. But now that I know what citric acid is, if I
Okay.
get tomato paste, I'm cool with it saying tomatoes, citric acid. So as I learn things, sure, I'll do more things. Oh,
But
sugar's in here, by the way, too.
but wouldn't you just? Why wouldn't you just Google those ingredients? Take 5 minutes, Google those ingredients instead of eating eggs and fish. And then also, let's say you do want to do whole foods. Why don't you just do tofu scramble? Tofu is a whole food. I mean, yes, it's processed soybeans, but I would consider tofu a whole food. You
Yeah.
mash it up, you season it, and you got your eggs.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I do. I actually haven't had tofu in a little while, but I'm perfectly fine with tofu. I find tofu to be perfectly healthy, and I'm kind of like on the fence about it, just as far as like when I look into things and when I think about things in a sense of whole foods. But yeah, anyways, I consider it close enough, and I would eat it now. I would factor like right now I'm doing a calorie deficit. I do about 1,700 calories, and I'm fine with that being in there. I'm just also fine with some eggs and some fish in there right now too.
Right,
So
right. But why wouldn't you just do the tofu scramble
oh, you mean
and
like
not eat the
okay,
eggs? Yeah.
so yeah,
Instead,
like
like,
so if I had like if I had like 300 calories worth of eggs and 300 calories worth of tofu, just do 600 calories of just tofu. I see.
sure,
Um,
or
yeah,
something
yeah,
else.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's something like that. Yeah, and maybe that's gonna be the thing. I have gone back and forth. Like I have done so many different um, times of trying to do well and it not being successful, and yeah, this is just something I'm doing right now. So
Okay,
But
all
I'm
right, all
with
right.
you.
So let's get
I
it.
get
Let's
it.
get
Yeah.
into it. All right, we're running out of time. So
Okay.
let's get
Yeah.
into the meat and
Morals.
potatoes. So this is what I would argue. What I would say is, before making decisions on nutrition, you should be able to understand the research, be able to understand what ingredients are. Like, you're making like very, very partially informed decisions on what's healthy and what's not, which is just not the way we want to go about it. Go ahead.
Well, let me say real quick, if there's FDA approved potentially like hundreds, maybe even thousands of things that we might not be able to pronounce well that are ingredients in foods, um, n- learning all those possible things before
No, no,
making
but you
any
don't
food
eat all.
choices.
No, no, but you don't eat all of them. Even so, like your diet's mostly going to be whole foods anyway, right?
Yeah.
So like oats, fruits, vegetables, right? But for the couple things that you want to eat that'll fulfill that craving to help you get off
Mhm.
the cookie and cake addiction,
Yeah. Yeah.
so like the things in Just Egg, it takes 5 minutes. Just Google what is this, what is that. Look at some
Mhm.
health outcomes. That's it, right? So
Mhm. But it
that
has sugar and oil, and I want to view those things as foods I don't consume, and like that's just a flat
okay,
out hard stop. I want so
sure.
it may be something else like tofu and not the just egg, but
Yeah, sure, sure. I'm
but
just
just
I'm
so you
just
know.
saying if you wanted to consume something but it had a long ingredient in it that you don't know,
Mhm.
you could just Google it and figure it out.
That's
For
right.
for
Yeah.
the few processed foods that you may want to put in there, right? But if you want to get rid of all of that, that's fine. Just eat whole foods. But again, let's get okay for everyone waiting. Let's get into it, right? So because
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm struggling to understand first, regardless of everything else we've discussed, because again, I do think you should have tried therapy. I do think you could definitely find foods to fulfill that craving that are whole foods that don't contribute to animal exploitation. But all of that aside, right, I do find your reasoning very silly and funny, but all of that aside, I'm struggling to understand how any of this is a justification for direct animal enslavement and exploitation. I'm really struggling to understand that because if that's the case, I'm assuming, I mean, do you think that there is a difference between humans and animals where it's justified in the animal case and not in the human case? Because I'm assuming
Yeah.
you wouldn't accept exploiting humans to crave your junk food addiction, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or would you?
Okay. Well, yeah. Let me explain a few things, and I can definitely answer that one. Um,
Hold on, really
so
quick before we start.
yeah.
I got another super chat. Thank you again, recommended dose. You are way too generous for Saturday. He says one day I'll find the love of my life and stop sexually exploiting women, but it feels good right now. One day I'll stop and be a good boy. Yes, yeah, similar logic. But anyway, thank you.
Is it similar logic?
Absolutely, because you're
Really?
essentially saying, well, right now I need to exploit animals because I struggle with junk food. One day I'll stop exploiting animals, but for right now I'm going to do this because it helps me, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
similarly, because essentially you're getting a benefit out of exploiting animals, right? Because it's not a
Yeah. Yeah.
need, right? You
Do,
would survive perfectly fine without it. In
do,
fact,
do
you'd
you
probably live a long life. You probably live, especially with today's modern day, even eating this junk food, even being overweight, you'd probably live into your 60s, 70s, 80s with modern medicine and everything, even eating the junk food. Because you're not that overweight. I mean, if you were like 500 pounds, I'd probably say
Well,
no.
yeah, with modern medicine, we'll make it so you keep living, but you
Sure.
are every week you're going to the hospital because you have to get hooked up to different things and you're miserable and
Well, no,
everything
no, no.
is
I'm just saying that it's not a life or death thing, right? Because I know in your stream you
correct.
also compared it to like, well, if you were on an island and you had to hunt animals.
Didn't
The,
compare it. I just using an example where almost all vegans, I don't know if you're one as well, will say that if they're on an island they would do this. So I'm showing that there is a reason that it would make something at least acceptable, even if still immoral, acceptable in the eyes of each individual. And most people fall into that category. And so I was just putting that as that's here. And my range of reason goes from here to here, and yours might go from here to here or whatever. And so it's not necessarily comparing. But I think you're very wrong about the sexual component comparing because I mean, if that's where your morals lie, that's fine.
well,
But if
so
you
that's
think,
I would. You were about to go because I did ask you like NTT, right? So like, would
yeah, yeah.
you find what you're doing in the animal context to be acceptable in the human context?
Well, what I'm doing, let's see. Okay, so with the comparison of the idea that of what that super chat person just said about I plan to find a person, but until then I'm going to keep sexually whatever. I would not think it would be okay to consume eggs and fish right now if I did it for sexual purposes.
No, no, that's not. Carson, let's go back to the
No.
original
I
question.
know. I just want to
Yeah,
add
yeah.
your super chat person did their super chat. I just want to comment on that real quick. I don't think taste pleasure. It will just real quick for anybody listening. If I were to boil a pasture raised egg that I feel fine with right now and eat it, and if somebody were to take a pasture raised egg and make a batch of cookies and give me a cookie that had pasture raised egg in it, I would feel that that was immoral to consume. I
What's the
shouldn't
difference?
The difference is because I am doing these there on multiple levels. I'm doing this thing, but a big part of the level is I'm doing this thing for optimal health for myself. If I
But
were
you
to
don't need. But
harm,
there's no so like you're
maybe,
saying you're
but let's
doing this thing.
just bear with me real quick. Let's
Okay.
just That's my thought process. I'm convinced that that's why that is part of what works.
Okay.
But if I were to consume the cookie, knowing that I know that's unhealthy, I know that's not going to be good for my health, I would be exploiting animals for taste pleasure. I find that completely immoral.
But
So
but
I think
you're
those are very different.
but the thing is, so you've acknowledged that you can be, as a vegan, you can be healthy eating fully plant based and not exploiting animals. So
Correct.
essentially, you're eating eggs and fish for taste pleasure. You're eating eggs and fish to
No.
supplement. Yep, I'll explain.
Have you
You're,
tasted fish
I'll explain.
roast?
So you're eating eggs and fish to supplement certain foods that you were addicted to because of taste pleasure, right? So sure, you might
Yeah.
not enjoy the taste of eggs and fish as much as you do cookies and cake, but you're not doing it for any nutritional need. You're not doing it because you can't be healthy eating plant-based or get all your nutrients eating plant-based. You're
Here's
doing
the
it
big
in
yeah.
in the place of cookies and cake. So essentially,
Right.
whether the egg is in a cookie or the egg is by itself, they're serving the same purpose
No,
because
no,
it's
no.
not a nutritional need.
There's a difference between serving the purpose of getting healthier versus serving the purpose of taste pleasure. Huge difference. And same thing with sexual pleasure.
Okay, but anyway, back to the question because you
Okay, yeah,
didn't
yeah.
answer my original question.
Yeah.
So, would you accept your actions in the human context, right? Because right now you're seemingly okay in the animal context. Would you accept it in the human context?
Okay, so let's look at each of the individual things. And because no, I view humans different than animals. So there's honey, eggs, fish. So the honey, I'm just like insects. I'm just unsure how I feel, which it seems like most vegans are as well. Um, and but also honey is one of the things I care least about. It just happens to be something that's part of. I'll use this word so I can get made fun of, but it's part of the journey of
Mm-hmm.
of, of figuring out the best ways to get off this addiction. So that's honey. So insects, yeah, I don't care too much about insects, but it's complicated. But that's there. I'm going to set that there, and I don't have any interest in comparing them to humans because I just don't care. Um, and then fish, I'm on the fence about. Of Do they feel pain? There are like two studies exist in the world where it seems like there's something. It's really hard to know exactly what it is. The sensors that make mammals feel pain, those aren't the same. Like fish don't have that sensor. So I'm unsure if it's something to worry too much about. So the fish itself dying, and then I'm kind of on the fence if I care about a fish that eats other fish, like killing and eating something that kills and eats.
Carson,
It's not enough. Hold on.
you're kind of dodging here. I hate to do this,
No,
but I really
I don't
gotta.
want to.
I
I don't
yeah
want
yeah
to
I
dodge. I just really quick last thing. So that's where I am with the fish. And
sure.
then with the eggs, I just want to point out why I do the pasture raised or whatever. So like I don't think anybody should own any animals whatsoever. I don't care if you have a vegan dog and you treat it really well. I don't think anybody should own any animals. So in that sense, I don't think anybody should own any chickens or whatever. But in the sense of if you have chickens, they're free roaming, they're laying eggs, whatever. I don't care pretty much anything about that at all. The only downside I can see for the most part of pasture raised eggs would be that those hens come from where if males are born, they get thrown into a grinder or whatever. And so just so you know, my personal moral philosophy on animal life is I'm not sure if I care about the life itself. I care about the suffering. There are many things I would not do, and I don't think others should do that cause animal suffering. But the death itself, if it's instant death, if it's quick, there's a lot of different methods. that I just don't care too much about. Now, one
Okay.
thing I will say, one last, really last, I promise, last little thing is they developed this technology in the UK and a few other places where before the eggs even hatched,
Yeah, I heard
both
this.
the
Yeah,
males and the
they could
gender.
determine
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
who's. Yeah, yeah.
They could determine and take care of it if it's male or whatever. So what I would compare that to is how vegans usually react to crop deaths, where they'll say, well, the farmers are the problems. They're the ones causing the crop deaths, and if they change that in the future, then that's great. And then I could say the same thing here. Not that it's a good argument, but I just want to point out that most vegans have really bad arguments, or at least ones that I've come across, where I could say, like, yeah, they need to figure out how to not have to throw chicks into grinders, but that's not my problem. That's their problem, and that's usually the vegan argument. So, anyways, all that being said, um, with humans, I think there's many reasons that we don't treat humans the same way, and mostly it's because we have our personal wants for how um, for ourselves. So we create a society where we say like, I don't
No, no, no,
believe in
dude,
you,
dude,
don't
dude.
do
Hold on,
this.
hold on. I gotta reel this
Okay,
in, Cars.
sorry.
Yeah, you're about to
Reel
go
it
on a
in, reel
whole
it in.
nother rant. Like, I reel
That's
this in.
fine.
So,
Yeah, yeah.
so, would you say you are in agreement, right? I know you said you're not sure about fish pain, whatever. Are you in agreement that fish and chickens are sentient? Yes or no?
Um, likely fish, but I'm not fully convinced. Chickens, yeah, definitely 100%.
Okay, okay. So, but you would you? Is it fair to say that it's more than reasonable to apply the precautionary principle to fish? Most fish,
More than reasonable.
considering that they function similarly, they have nerves, they do. There is evidence that they are sentient. In fact, the New York Declaration of Consciousness, which came out fairly recently, they are in agreement that almost certainly now it's a level below mammals and birds, but they are most likely sentient. So would
Yeah,
you?
sentient to some degree. I guess what I'm pointing out is like depending on the level of sentience would affect me making a choice based on like when you said I could live 5 years longer or whatever. If there's something that's like slightly sentient, then I wouldn't care as much. Where I wouldn't want to like make chickens suffer
But when you say
to live
slightly
slightly longer.
sentient, again, we're not talking about intelligence. We're talking about they either are individuals or they
Yeah.
aren't. So would you consider fish individuals or would you consider them objects?
Well, when I talk about sentience, I'm not referring to individuals versus objects. I'm referring to ability to feel pain, and that's top thing for me would be
So
ability
what
to
if
feel pain.
fish were sentient but can't feel pain?
Yeah, they're sentient but can't feel pain. So they can't feel pain, but they can perceive things.
Yes.
They can see. I don't give a shit about what they see.
Okay, so what you're
Yeah.
saying is if there was a so again, I'm just gonna run NTT, right?
Same with
If there
humans,
was
yeah.
yeah,
If
so
human, yeah, if humans could not like if we didn't have to have laws set up for that boring thing I was about to go on, and we just lived out in the wild, and there was a human that couldn't feel pain, yeah,
hold on. So if there was a human that couldn't feel pain, or if there was a group of humans that couldn't feel pain, you're fine with slitting their throats for nutrition?
I wouldn't care about the suffering part of the slitting the throat.
No, no, no.
Because
I'm talking about
there wouldn't
so
be any
so
suffering. But yeah, yeah, yeah. So with humans, we have a will to live beyond instinct or something like that, where we have wants for the future. But the only reason to really care about that would be to benefit ourselves, like each other, like saying you don't do this, I don't do this. In nature, I still personally would like to afford somebody that right to not have their potential future taken out. But I care a lot less about it in that context. Sure.
but what you're saying is so you're saying that there's something valuable about the sentient experience beyond just the ability to suffer or the ability to feel joy, right? So there
For humans, yes. I'm not so
yeah, yeah, for
convinced with
humans.
animals. Yeah. Oh, yes, for humans,
Okay.
yes.
But if we're all sentient, right? If chickens are sentient, cows are sentient, fish, I'm going to say are sentient, pigs are sentient, humans are sentient, then what is like obviously yes, we have like future desires and wants, but we also do experience things on a day to day. We do have a will to live beyond just like a version of suffering, right? So like animals when they reproduce, right? So when a cow gives birth, they're caring for their young. That has nothing to do with their perception of pain, right? Their ability to like feel pain. So even if they
Yeah, pain
didn't feel any
pleasure. Yeah.
pain, yeah, they would still care for their young. They would still eat. They would still have some
Yeah.
kind of experience, right?
Mhm.
So again, I'm not the reason I wouldn't, as someone who's been in the vegan space, who's been, having these conversations, I'm not understanding like what exactly is the difference between sentient animals and
Mhm.
sentient humans, where in one context it's unjustified to exploit them, right? For
Mhm.
for a trivial reason, which I'll say in this case it is a trivial reason, right? It's really like a first world problem, versus
Fair.
in the other context, the animal context, it is justified, right? For first world problems. I can't stop eating all of the delicious
Yeah.
junk food, which I don't want to belittle your problem. It is a serious
Hey,
issue in
you're
the
fine.
world. Overweight, obesity, hyperpalatable foods, it is a struggle. But
Mhm.
but the fact is we have I call it a first world problem is because, especially in America, we have so much food, we have so much abundance that we overconsume, and it leads to
Yeah.
health problems, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah, go
hold
ahead
on. Can I ask you something just to see where you're at on this chicken thing?
if you'd like
If
to.
just this is very important to me, because
Hmm.
we could break this down and be very fascinating. But if, hypothetically, let's say all chickens were female, they just asexually produce and eggs exist and whatnot. Um, if there wasn't the factor of male chicks going in grinders or being gassed or being
Hmm.
snuffed out before they're even hatched, are you having a concern with pasture-raised eggs, separate from that?
Yes, because yeah, I'm
Oh,
against
that's
slavery.
that's interesting.
Yeah, I'm against enslavement. Because we're
Oh,
not
okay, yeah,
talking about, like, it's one thing if in the context where you and even this I would have to, it would have to be a very specific hypothetical for me to sign off on. But it's one thing if you were talking about, like, okay, you're walking around and this is a vacuum where there's no industry that can come up from this. There's no, it's a one-time done deal, right? You're in a vacuum. There's some random unfertilized egg, and you choose to crack that open and eat it, right?
yeah. Hmm.
That's one thing. And again, in that case, again, it have to be very. I'm not saying that I would even consider that moral, depending on the hypothetical entailments, but or the restrictions, but pasture raised means nothing more than like free range slaves, right? We're just talking about like we're still breeding chickens into existence to be our slaves. We take what isn't ours from them, right? Which is their unfertilized eggs. We're
Hmm.
genetically modifying them to in order to do this for us on a more like humane way. So yeah, I don't see a again when we put that in the human context, it's
Hmm.
abhorrent, right? It's beyond messed up when we put it in the human
Yeah.
context. So again, like I would and I don't want please like I'm not saying you're dodging necessarily, but
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
going on different tangents. I really do want to answer like
Well, I don't want
running
to dodge.
NTT.
I just like it's just it. I think this kind of thing helps us figure out what we do and don't care about. But yeah, so I have no interest in forgetting your question, and I don't want to dodge at all. But somebody brought up an argument to me before because I'm with you. I'm against the idea of humans caging things in and whatever. But somebody was talking about like, so if there were some lambs out in nature, whatever lambs look like in nature, and some wolves were going to eat it or whatever, would it be better to have a huge piece of land that's fenced in that could keep wolves out, and you put these lambs in there and they just live out their best lives and you do nothing or whatever? And like I'm kind of unsure how I feel about that. In general, I like the idea of humans staying away from animals, but doing this thing is its thing. So if chickens in a large enough space, if every chicken in this case in pasture raised, it's 108 square feet. That's a lot per chicken. um, if they're just having better lives than if they were out in nature. Now I know that they've been like slightly modified and bred in certain ways or whatever, but
Well, not
I
slightly.
just
They're very modified. Like in terms of the
fine
chickens
there.
that we use to consume, they're modified to the point where they're having periods almost every single day versus once a month that they should be. They are unfortunately like I know you posed a hypothetical, but currently at this time, there is no way to avoid the male chicks getting ground up, right? There is no way to avoid the female egg
Yeah, I
layers
was just
having
I
broken
only
bones
brought that
from.
hypothetical to see what things you cared about because I wasn't sure because when I talk about the thing I'm causing to chickens, I'm referring to the male chicks in the grinder because I view the other thing in the same way that I view vegans that have vegan dogs. I don't think anybody should own dogs, but I'm not going to go start a war over it. It's just I wish people would like get it together in the same sense that I want to get it together too.
Do you have
But
an issue with slavery?
Do I have an issue with? Can you expand upon
Yeah.
that a little bit?
So, do you have an issue with, let's put it in the human context. Do you have an issue with slaves being fed well, put in a nice home, be given, space to walk around, right? But at the end of the day, they have to do everything that another human tells them to do. They don't get paid. They don't have free will. They're essentially brought
Yeah,
into
yeah. No,
existence for this
slavery's
one
bad. Yeah.
purpose. Yeah. So,
I'm
okay,
with you.
you're against slavery.
Yes.
Okay, so what is the difference in the animal context where slavery is now justified?
What's the difference in the animal context? Okay. What is the difference? Okay. Do I even find that to be the case? Do, 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 do. I don't think it is.
Okay, but you're paying for it. You're pasture raised eggs. You're paying for slavery, and then in the fish context, you're essentially paying for these fish to be hunted. So that's even worse. We could even talk. We'll talk about that. That's obviously in the human context. That's a big no-no, right? I'm assuming you would be against
Oh,
humans being hunted down.
no. If people are gonna eat animals, I would say hunting all the way.
No. I'm saying in the human context. I'm saying humans
Oh, in
being
the human.
hunted down.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. If humans had to eat humans, I would go a different approach than
Well,
hunting.
not had if humans wanted to eat humans for their own
Yeah,
personal
yeah.
reasons.
Oh, I'm just saying hypothetically if they had to.
Right.
But yeah, if they want to. No, I don't think that would be ideal for humans. I think we should design societies that benefit us, and the only way to benefit us would be to give mutual benefit laws for protection, for sure.
Okay, so I just want to point out to people listening, you did just reveal a contradiction, right? You essentially said you're against
Sure.
slavery, but you support slavery.
Yeah. No. You hear me out 100%. I don't think at this point I've not been convinced that humans should own animals in any kind. The closest thing to owning a dog would be if you went out into the wild and built a cabin that had no doors and that dog wanted to come in and could come in and out. I'm not in favor of pet ownership even in the rescue case. I'm anti owning animals, but I have everything to different degrees, and I think owning a vegan dog is less of a problem than having a bunch of chickens stuffed into a tiny barn with pumping them full of hormones and their legs breaking just so we can eat them for taste pleasure. Yeah, there's different levels. But yeah, I'm anti owning animals, but I don't think it's a huge deal to have a huge piece of land that chickens can roam around on. And yes, I think chickens roaming around on a big land, is way different and probably potentially more beneficial for the chicken, especially if it was like if people went out and got like wild chickens that weren't going to be turned into whatever we have. This is similar to dogs. We've bred dogs to be what they are. We've bred chickens to be what they are. If I think chickens would probably have a better life, and I can easily be convinced that if you go get like wild what's the word? But anyways, just a wild type chickens, and you put them on a big property, let them roam free, and then have a place that they can go in to roost for the night and not get eaten by wild animals. I don't know what it would do for like overpopulation and starve wolves, but yeah, I think it's possibly morally better.
All
It's
right. Well,
complicated.
yeah. So let me just ask you this question. So,
Okay.
would you say that what you're doing is morally justified, or are you fine with contradicting your values or being a hypocrite because you have this goal, this personal goal to get off junk food?
It depends on what you mean by justified. I like to use the word
Morally,
acceptable.
morally justified.
Um, Yeah. Well, when I think of things as being moral, if I think it's acceptable to do, I could call it acceptable and immoral.
Okay.
Um,
So what you're saying is you're acknowledging that what you're doing is immoral, but it's acceptable to you given the goals you have.
yeah, if me and you and my daughter were on an island, I would kill you so quick and feed you to her. And I would find that immoral that I did that,
Okay.
but I wouldn't
So
even blink.
but okay. I don't know what that has to do with the context you're in where it's just
I'm
a
pointing
cookie.
out that it's immoral for me to kill you, but
Right.
with reasons behind it, I would find it acceptable for at
But
least myself.
yeah, but even going off of intuition, even going off of like inference, forget about science, which goes really against a lot of what you're saying when it comes to nutrition claims. But when it just comes to inference, I don't think anyone would sign off on it being reasonable to exploit animals, to commit something immoral, to be a hypocrite, commit something that goes against your own commit an action that goes against your own values because you eat too much junk food. Like that's
I don't
great. That's like insane to me. That's like crazy to me. And
Is it less insane than at
yes,
least completely non-vegans?
here's the thing. So it what I would say is it's probably I'm gonna assume you're committing or you're contributing less to the exploitation of animals than a non-vegan. So in like your impact, it's better. But in terms of the logic, no, I would not say it's better. You're essentially using non-vegan logic, but then
What if I'm successful at it?
what
What
if
if
you're
2 years?
successful at it?
Yeah. Would
Okay,
you
but that's
still?
like, so, okay, I'll give you an example. Ready? So I have a problem where I can't stop eating cookies, okay? And
Okay.
I'm putting on 50 pounds, right? And
Yeah.
I'm convinced that to fix my problem, I just have to eat babies' arms, okay? So to
Okay.
fix my problem, I have to capture babies, chop up their arms, and by eating their arms, if I do that for 6 months, a year, I will be able to stop eating cookies, right?
Mhm.
The success of that has nothing to do with the morality of what I'm doing, right? So like,
Correct.
let's say in a year, I'm successful, I've eaten 50 baby arms and I never have to eat a cookie ever again and I lose the weight and I'm healthy and I go, okay, now I'm going to be plant-based, right? Now I'm going to be vegan. That doesn't take away from the fact that I just committed horrible atrocities and went against my own values just to be successful in something that I could have found success doing something else potentially, right? Especially when I didn't exhaust all my options. If you told me, not that it would make a difference in the morality, but if you told me, yeah, I've been to eating disorder therapy, I've been to Overeaters Anonymous, I've gone to regular therapy, I tried to supplement with tofu scramble, I tried all of these things and none of them worked. I seek professional help, I seek different dietary replacements. Then I'd say, you know what? I can understand that. I can understand where you're coming from more. I can understand the position you're in, and I'm sorry you're dealing with that. It's still not justified. It's still not cool, but at least you did try and do all those things. But you made this decision without even going through all your options, and that's just crazy to me.
Well, I don't know about the going through all the options. Like as far as like tofu and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I do eat tofu. I've always eaten tofu.
No,
So
I'm saying
as far as
trying,
it's
yeah, to
yeah.
fill a food in for the junk food,
Yeah.
separate than fish and eggs.
Yeah, I've been doing that my whole adult life. But as far as the like the psychiatry and the any other possible things, yeah, I mean, for one, you send a psychiatrist my way, I'll chat with them. But anyways, yeah, no, I tried a whole bunch of different things, but that doesn't change it. It's still there's still a moral component. There's still an issue here. I don't think snuffing out a just born chick is a huge deal in the realm of what's huge deals. But it's enough of a huge deal that I wish it didn't happen. I don't want to do it. I'm going to be at the point where I don't do it. But I don't think of them as big deals. The baby arms that you were
Okay.
talking about is complicated because of how I think we should structure laws, and then also the difference between humans and other animals. But yeah,
Well, what's funny is again, you actually didn't specify the difference, right? When
yeah,
actually you
I'll
admitted to,
specify it. I don't
go ahead.
I have not been convinced of any reason whatsoever that there is a species of animal aside from um, humans, not just Homo sapiens, but probably all realms of humans, um, and outside of humans that have some thought about the future and why they would care to live any further.
Okay,
So
okay.
if they were,
Oh,
well,
okay,
hold
okay,
on,
okay.
hold
Oh,
on.
I'm so
So
pumped. Okay, go ahead.
outside, and if I'm wrong, I mean, I'm not saying that I've been convinced the other way. I just haven't. I don't even think that there's a thought on that. In
Hmm.
fact, anyways, so aside from a connection one might have to another, like it means a lot to me if there's like a mother with its babies and that kind of thing,
Hmm.
cows and whatever animals. Outside of that, if there's an animal that is not nobody's dependent on it, then it being Thanos out of existence, I just don't have many thoughts on
Okay,
that. I
okay.
don't.
Okay. So just to be clear for everyone listening, you did contradict yourself earlier with the slavery thing, but now you're actually providing a trait. So now you've actually, it seems like you're You're actually trying to avoid the contradiction and provide a trait. In this case,
What was the contradiction? 'Cause
so
I'm
you
against
said that you
slavery,
were
and
against
I
slavery in the
am.
human context, and then
Yeah.
you said that slavery also wasn't justified in the animal context, but you're paying for that slavery.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Okay, you're calling the
yeah,
contradiction because I'm doing it.
yeah,
There's not a
because
contradiction in my logic, but there's a contradiction in my action. Got it.
yeah, you're a
I
hypocrite.
thought,
Yeah.
yeah, I thought you're saying there's a contradiction in my logic,
No,
which
no, no.
would be
Yeah, sorry,
fine.
sorry.
I
Yeah,
would
yeah.
just want to address it. Okay,
No,
go
no, no.
on.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, sorry. You are
Yeah, I'm doing
committing
an
an
action I
action
do
that
not
you
want to
deem
do.
immoral. Correct. So, okay. So you said that earlier, but now you're giving a trait that does differentiate animals and humans. So your trait is expectation or longing, or like the awareness of a future, essentially, like the ability to understand that you have a future and you can care about that future. Is that the
Yeah.
Okay.
Something like that. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So let's say there is a group of mentally challenged human beings who who only live day to day, essentially have the experience of a cow.
Yeah.
Is it somehow justified now to enslave them and to exploit them?
Are they also ones that don't suffer, or are we not factoring that part in?
No, because you didn't. The main trait you gave me was the ability to see, to expect a future life or care about your future life.
Oh, gotcha.
Or are you saying both? Are you saying in tangent to the
No.
pain thing?
It would just be really easy to answer if we put both in there. But
Okay, let's
no.
put both. Okay, so let's put both in there.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So if this was out in nature and I knew that they had no expectation of anything in the future, there were no dependence on
No,
them.
not out in nature. They're bred. Let's say we breed
No, when
them
I
into.
say nature, I mean not in a society with laws and rules, because that means.
Oh, okay. So yeah, separate
Yeah.
from legality. Separate from legality. Yeah.
Yeah,
of
yeah.
course.
Okay, so there's just a human. I know they are human. And I know that if you said like, "Hey, do you care to exist tomorrow?" And they go, "What does that even mean?" Like, I don't have a thought. I'm just here. I don't have a thought of tomorrow.
Uh-huh.
And then they also do not feel pain.
Then you're fine with ending their life that day, and
reasons.
so
Yeah.
you're fine with slitting their throat and putting them in
I
a
think
sandwich.
so. I feel like I'm not even walking into.
Wow,
a trap.
I just can't even. That's just because they're still sentient. So like just because they can't feel pain, like let's say their pain receptors don't work, and yeah, they live in the moment, but they're still sentient. They're still a subject. They're still a subject. So
Yeah,
the
but-
fact that you see no moral issue with just ending their life prematurely is crazy to me.
Yeah, okay. So let me ask you two questions. First one just being about a random stranger. So let's say that somebody like in the next city over from you dies. They're 30. They died. What are your concerns with their
What do
death?
you mean?
So they died. You find out they died. What are your first thoughts, and why do you care?
Nothing.
You don't care?
No, I mean, I don't necessarily like hearing that people die, especially if it's like a tragedy. But no, I have no like emotional. I have no like connection to that. No.
No, I don't have a follow-up question then.
Okay.
I would assume you would care because you're caring about this action of killing this person.
Well, no, because I'm not. I didn't
talking about
kill the
even-
person. Yeah, I didn't
Yeah,
kill
yeah.
the neighbor.
You
So
didn't
like,
kill them. I'm just curious why you care that they're even dead. Like, well, if you care. And if
no,
you
no,
don't,
I
then
don't. I don't care. No. So them being dead isn't what matters to me. It's them being killed by another moral agent who can choose not to do that. That's the issue. It's the violation of rights when they are deserving of those rights because they're sentient.
Yeah. I mean, I would like to know why you care about that part, but I feel like that could go on and on. So I won't personally ask the question. But
Okay.
I would assume you'd care. So I could tell you why I would care. I would care because I know I'm a human, same species, and I would imagine that they had things they wanted to do, like they were looking forward to listening to some album they hadn't listened to or whatever, and they had these thoughts of that. That's one thing why I'd care. Another thing I'd care is like, oh man, like what if that person has a kid and that kid's sad that their dad's dead or whatever.
No. So when I
And that's
say
about it.
I don't.
got about two reasons that other people would be sad makes me sad, and that those people might have had dreams like I have dreams. I can't think of any other reason to care about a human being dead.
So when I say that I wouldn't care, what I mean by like I wouldn't care morally, assuming that it wasn't a murder or wasn't something that has to do with morals. If I hear that somebody just died, let's say they died of heart disease or they died of something, and I have no like connection to this person, I mean people die. right? Like that sucks. I wish we didn't have to die, but people die, right? So I'm not
Yeah.
going to care. I have no moral reason to care about that specific death. Now, if there are people being murdered, or there are people who are having immoral actions committed to them, and that's why they're dying, right? If they're being killed, that's a whole nother story.
Okay,
Then
well
I
then
would immediately care.
I'll ask this
Um,
question, and you could decide not to answer it, and we can save it for a different talk. But why do you care
what do you mean about
if
them
somebody
being
kills
killed?
them? Yeah,
Because that goes against my values.
but why do you have that value? Like, why do you care? What just
Because
for
they're
the person?
sentient.
But
Yeah,
why,
I think morality is subjective. Yeah. So my
but,
preference is, so I have a value for sentience, right? Because there's sentient individuals can have a subjective experience. They have a will to live. And I think it is wrong to abuse them, kill them, violate the rights they should have.
okay, so we have the will to live. So let's remove that part. Okay, so let's say they don't have the will to live. They're sentient. What about them being sentient makes you care if somebody kills them?
They have a subjective experience. So they can experience what's happening to them.
Okay,
And
so
they can
what if?
experience their life ending. They can experience, yeah.
Okay, so let's take a rock that's not sentient, okay?
Uh-huh.
And then let's say that we make it become sentient to a degree, just the perception degree. So this rock, it doesn't even need an eyeball, but it can perceive light and color and whatnot. If we could somehow ask it a question of what it's seeing, it would see the same thing you see. It would see the same color scheme as humans see. It would see trees and whatever, and it would see a thing. It doesn't feel happy about what it sees. It doesn't feel sad. It has no care about anything in life, but it is doing a sliver of one of the things that makes something sentient. It can perceive. Do
Well,
you think it?
well, that's not sentient. So like you could argue that plants, they can still like feel sensations. They have like communications with their environment. So like I care about sentience, right? If somebody is deemed sentient, that's what I care about.
Okay, so what makes something sentient? Because from my understanding, part of it, being able to perceive, would be sentience. So that's an
Yeah.
important question, and I don't think enough vegans talk about that. So I think we should really talk about this. What is the smallest amount of sentience that could happen that would make you call something sentient?
So I don't think it's gradual, right? For me, it makes sense that sentience is binary. So either you have a subjective experience or you don't, right? Everything else is more so having to do with intelligence or cognitive ability, right? So
Okay.
so like a human is sentient, a chicken is sentient, right? A chicken may have a consciousness or a cognitive ability that, or sorry, I guess consciousness and sentience might be the same thing, but a chicken may have a cognitive ability or a thought process that is way less advanced than that of a human, but they're both experiencing the world subjectively. And I understand where you're getting at. Pain and suffering is a huge part of the sentient experience, or part of why we care about sentient individuals versus like plants or rocks. But it's not everything, right? Just because.
So what is it? Just sorry to cut you off, but just because I feel like you're not exactly answering the question. So you said subjective experience. Now, when you remove pain and suffering, and let's say thoughts of a future, what does a subjective experience look like to varying degrees?
I mean, that's hard to say. I mean, there's a full
Like, let's
range
take
of
a rock.
emotion.
There's a rock here, and you magically make it have a subjective experience with no pain, no suffering,
Yeah.
and no thoughts of the
Well,
future.
that would be somebody.
What do you give it?
A brain and a brain and a nervous system, maybe a dysfunctional nervous system, but it would be definitely a brain, something that
Yeah,
can
so-
actually think. Because animals, I think we don't give
think.
animals enough credit, because animals do think, right? They have a brain. They have, especially mammals and birds, at the very least, they have a brain. They have a nervous system. They do think. They do process information, right? So
Yeah.
yeah,
That's fine.
so-
I just want to figure out because I think you might be right that it is I can't remember what term you called it, but that something either is sentient or
binary,
isn't sentient.
binary.
Binary, yeah. But we could find out where that cutoff is, where somebody could say like, if this, then this. And so when we're talking about this rock that we're going to give sentience, so you said thought. Is that what it was? Thought? It
Well,
could
brain.
think.
Yeah, you said what would you give them? You would have to give them a brain. at the very
well,
least.
but brain means nothing because something could be brain dead. It could be brain like it could somehow you
Sure,
can keep a
yeah,
brain
like
alive while it's so it
yeah,
would be what is the brain doing that makes you care about it? Because why we care about these things matter. And I don't think you're wrong. I just it's not something I've explored too much and I want to explore. So if we
yeah.
remove the pain and suffering, which is my top thing, pleasure you'd have to factor in there too. And and then we remove the will for the future, which is complicated, but just thoughts. So you have a rock there. It can see, it's perceiving, and it can think about it. What would it be? What would it look like that the rock, how the rock would think if it's just it's not moving, it's just looking out. It sees a tree and some kids running by. Um,
Well, it's hard to know. I don't know what's exactly is going on in a cow's brain. Just like I don't know what you're exactly thinking, right? You can tell me,
yeah,
but it's hard to know exactly what's in somebody's head. But by
yeah,
them having a brain and nervous system, we can and by their behaviors and different studies, we can infer that there's some kind of consciousness and cognitive thought going on. Right. So like,
yeah,
yeah, it's not there definitely, I think more research needs to be done. But again, I would rather just leave them like based
yeah.
on what we already have, there's really no justification to do what we do to them. And
Do you think there's an action that humans do that is not based on pleasure at all times?
pleasure is a tricky word. If you mean by like
Mhm.
the desire for well-being, probably not. I would say that we always function like our function, unless we have like a disorder or some kind of like thing disrupting that. I would say we're
Yeah.
always functioning for the desire to have well-being.
Yeah, so like even if we well not just well-being, but just anything we want. Just imagine anything you could do. It's I feel like it's something like because you have the pleasure to do so. Now, even
No,
if
no,
it's a
because I will.
selfless act,
Well, I was
it's
gonna say
still
I will stop myself from doing something I want to do because I
Mhm.
know it'll benefit my well-being in the future.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
And that's a pleasure. You have the pleasure of having that well-being in the future. So this
Sure, yeah.
pleasure
If you want to
outweighs the
use
other
pleasure
one.
and well-being like synonymously, that's fine.
Well, yeah, and I think anything, even if you take time out of your day to help somebody out, it's because you get pleasure out of helping people. Or if somebody gets zero pleasure out of helping people, they will not help
But it
people.
could just be neutral. So like well-being isn't necessarily like a happiness, right? It could just be neutral, right? So I don't necessarily agree that like, for example, if I'm doing something, I don't always feel like joy or like necessarily like pleasure. I could just be
Mhm.
neutral. Like, okay, I don't mind it either
But
way, you know?
out of another choice you could do, I think you're choosing the more pleasurable one.
Or the
I
one that's gonna make me like give me better well-being. Again, I don't
yeah,
know if we're
yeah,
using the words the same, but yeah, for me,
we
well-being and
probably
pleasure
are. Yeah.
are a little different. But if you want to use them the same, that's fine.
So if you remove the suffering and pleasure, trying to work this out in real time because I think you make a good point that if something can think, maybe that thing has value. I don't think like flowers can think, even though they do react in nature, like you were saying.
Well,
Where
if
if you take
something can think, right? They're not a thing anymore, right? They're someone
yeah,
because they're a
well,
subject.
sure. I don't want to get into the semantics of that, but I'm agreeing with you on some different levels here, and I think the idea of thinking is fascinating. If I thought to all the potential thoughts that could come from thinking, that might be enough for me. But that's why I'm trying to factor in this idea of pleasure, because if you remove pleasure and pain, I think everything that we think, everything that we do as humans, and I think all animals probably, that it's either based on some level of instinct or pleasure, or those maybe actually are the same thing. And so I'm wondering if we gave a non-sentient rock sentience by giving it thought, if there is no pleasure in existence, that I don't know if you can think without pleasure, but I could be wrong. So something worth thinking about. And if you have ideas on it, you can share it now. Otherwise, it's something I'll ponder more and chat with other people about.
Yeah, yeah, no, I'm not nothing really comes to mind now, but I appreciate. Look, I know you got to get going. I got to get going too, but I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate because you really did put yourself in the hot seat here. I think rightfully so, but you did put yourself in the hot seat. So I really do
Mhm,
appreciate you coming on and having this conversation.
mhm.
Thank you, recommended dose. I appreciate that. I appreciate you coming on, having this conversation, and um, in conclusion, again, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in conclusion, you don't really have a moral justification of what you're doing, and you're doing it specifically to fulfill a selfish goal or to benefit your health in a way that seems to be the easiest for you. What I would say is, look, there's a reason why we exploit animals in the first place, right? Because they were beneficial to us, right? We do benefit from their exploitation. And even from a mindset of, oh, we should value animals or we should care about them morally, consider them morally, we can all find ways of exploiting others that will benefit us, that will make our lives easier, that will help us in our day-to-day, right? But when we look at our moral values, and if we want to be logically consistent, none of those are justified. And if you're acknowledging that it's not justified, I would encourage you to align your actions with your values, not be kind of a piece, just to kick the junk food addiction. So that's where I'll leave it. If you have any closing terms, I'll let you go.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing. So the thing I keep getting asked the most since announcing this is like why I still call myself vegan. And for anybody that's listening that hasn't heard the beginning of this, when I asked you if 1% of the world was vegan the way you are, but 19% of the world was vegan not the way you are, you would use vegan because it's the most accurate term you can think of. I made a note.
Well, no.
Okay.
So in the context,
Sorry.
just to be clear, in the context, you were saying everyone was vegan like me, except they fed animals to their companion animals, and I didn't, right?
Yeah, and you considered them not vegan, but they were the majority,
Yeah.
and they considered you not vegan.
Yeah,
Why
I would
do you
say
use
practically it would. I call myself vegan. Like it makes sense to use the term vegan, but I don't have a tie to the label. Like if I had to change it or if I had to share my beliefs outside of that view, I still would.
Okay, I don't have a tie necessarily to it, but to answer the question, I think you answered it perfectly, and I've never used those exact words, but it's the most accurate term I can think of for who I am.
But
And it's kind of interesting because I think when a lot of people go non-vegan, first of all, they just go completely non-vegan and they just don't even think of vegan ideas whatsoever. But for me, I still have all the exact same thoughts. I want to change the world. I want to stop people from doing actions, even the ones I'm currently doing. Everything about me is the same. Everything. If I was gonna like pick up makeup for somebody, I would get a not tested on animals. Everything's the same, and I don't want to justify necessarily the few actions I'm doing in very particular ways.
sure.
But
So
anyways, that's why I could be convinced later. But right now, I'm fine with using the term
let me
vegan.
put it. Yeah, I think what will be better, and I just want to shout out, thank you, Aluwali Blue Vegan, for the super chat, $2. Carson, you're a goofy F word. Okay, okay. But thank you for the sorry, Carson. I got to read the super chat. Sorry,
That's fine.
but I appreciate the super chat. But again, you said convince people of not doing even the things you're doing. So sure, the only exception, because veganism is against the exploitation of animals, you are contributing to that exploitation. So just by like definition and any reasonable definition, I would say you're not vegan. But the only context I would accept you saying you're vegan is if you change your name from reasonable vegan to hypocritical vegan, because you're essentially admitting that you are a hypocrite. Now, I think that, sure, I think it's better that you are still advocating for people to be vegan or to not exploit animals or whatever. But to say that you're a reasonable vegan really sends a weird message. I think it says the wrong message, like, hey, you can be vegan and exploit chickens and fish if you have some kind of weird personal journey that you're on and you feel like you need to do that. So I would say, like, you can change your name to hypocritical vegan, but that's about it. I mean,
But if everybody that called themselves vegans had YouTube channels, more than 50% of them, you would tell them, why is vegan in your title? You feed your pets non-vegan pet food. So
and I would definitely
we all
encourage
have
them to
different
not do that
levels.
for sure.
Yeah, no, and I would too. And I actually think that feeding a cat meat is like typical cat food that comes from factory farmed animals like chickens and cows is way worse than what I'm doing.
But the thing is, so you're not even exploiting animals for another carnivorous animal. like, let's say
True.
you were iffy about the science, even though, again, it's not justification, but let's say you're iffy.
Mm-hmm.
You're not even exploiting animals for another carnivorous animal. You're exploiting animals for
Yeah.
yourself, which is
Yeah.
like, I would say that's
Yeah.
more not vegan than the
To
pet
kill
thing.
1,000 chickens that had to suffer during its entire life to feed one cat over its however many years is, I think, even though the cat's carnivorous, and I could imagine justifying some type of like the most humane way of feeding a cat, like you finding like free range stuff or go and hunt some wild chicken or something out in nature and bring it to your cat or whatever. I could justify some of that. But the way it's currently done and killing like thousands of animals to feed one animal, it'd be way more moral to kill that animal than to do that, especially compared to my situation. Not that I'm
Sure.
trying to like put myself like higher up or lower up. I'm doing something I don't want to do. I'm just saying if there's a vegan out there that's feeding their cat traditional cat food from the store, and then they're looking at me saying like, how dare you?
No,
I don't think they're
so
thinking
here's the
it
thing.
through.
I agree, right? I agree that a vegan that does feed their animal other animals and then calling out other vegans for doing stuff. Yeah, I think that's funny, and I think they're hypocritical as well. But that's not the case in this case, right? So
Yeah,
again, I would say, yeah. But anyway, I think we'll wrap it up. I gotta get going.
For
but,
sure. Yeah, thanks
thank
for
you,
talking, man.
Yeah, no, thank you, Carson. Thank you for everybody watching. I appreciate you joining. I appreciate the super chats and the subscribers. That's great. Yeah, Carson, anything else?
Nope. Yep.
All
We'll
right.
talk soon.
So thank you, Carson, and thank you, everybody else. You guys have a great one.
Yep. Take care.